Hi, how's your day going? Mine is really nice so far. It's sunny outside and that gives me a really good vibe, so I felt motivated to do another video. In today's video, I'm gonna share some tips and tricks that I've discovered so far about highlights and that I also use in most of my paintings. So I'm gonna start off by saying that in my opinion, you should leave the highlights towards the end of your painting, because adding them early on might change the perception of your drawing and you might end up overdoing some parts, if that makes sense. Now moving on, I'm going to use one of my brushes to do the highlights today, but you don't really need a special brush for this. Just pick one that you like and go for it, because the secret lies in the layer modes, not in the brush properties. So if you want soft lights, you can choose a round clean brush, and if you want some texture and hard edges, choose a square tip brush. As simple as that. But if your painting is bigger, like this one, it's not gonna make much of a difference honestly, since it's only noticeable in close-ups. The very first tip is to choose a light color, but never pure white. Please just do not use pure white. I used to pick white a lot, and looking back, I just think it looks way too shiny. It draws too much attention, and instead of giving that glossy look I was going for, it just looked overworked. You know what I mean? So instead of white, just pick a darker color. Still light, but not white. Ideally more saturated, but just do some swatches and see what works best for you. I recommend using the same tones that you have in the rest of your painting. It's not mandatory, but I think it just looks more put together. Therefore, I'm just gonna put it out there and you do whatever you want with that information, okay? So, for example, I'm gonna go for a warm pink to match the aesthetic of my painting. Now, the skin tone of your character is also important in choosing the right color, so keep that in mind as well. The next and probably most important tip is the layer mode. So, in order to make the highlights pop, you need to set your layer on add or vivid light. Really depends on whatever you like best. But for example, I go with add for highlights and vivid light for lighting, most of the time anyways. Oh, and by the way, I can do another video on lighting if you're curious, so let me know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see from me in the future, and hopefully I'm gonna deliver this decade. Now, for the actual highlights, you want to place them wherever you want to draw the attention of the viewer. So I usually go for the lips, eyes, inner corners, eyelids, and also a bit on the eye bags, because I feel like it adds a bit of dimension, you know? And also it looks pretty to me, not gonna lie. I wish I had that in real life, but I just have dark circles instead, so that's cool. And of course a little bit on her cheekbone and the tip of her nose. I actually used to add little dots on the eyebrows as well to give it a glossy look, but I don't do it as often anymore, because sometimes I feel like maybe it's too much, especially with the overdone blush and freckles and what else. So I'll just leave it like that this time. Okay, so now that I'm done, I'm just gonna lower the opacity of the layer a little bit, and I like doing this instead of carefully placing the highlights. I just go all the way and fix the opacity later. It's a win-win. And for the last tip, there's one thing I do when the whole painting is done and saved, and that is sharpen the highlights. There are actually two ways of making them pop even more, and I'm gonna cover them both because they are really easy to do, and it's just that extra detail that sometimes makes a difference, you know? So one way to do this is to duplicate the layer of the highlights. Set it to normal. Fill it with a dark color. Move it under the original layer, like that. And then just move it slightly until it looks good to you. This is kinda like the drop shadow option in Photoshop, I guess, and I think it looks really nice. Now, because I don't want every shadow to have the same position, I'll just use the selection tool and move them around a bit. Then I just erased most of it because it takes away from the shine since I lowered the opacity of the highlights in the first place. You can also change the layer mode of the shadows if you find one that looks better. Okay, so the second way is to use the Sharpen tool. But for that to work, at least in Procreate, you need to have the whole painting on one layer. Otherwise, it won't work only on highlights. So just finish it up, save it, open it again, and now use the Sharpen tool. I go for the pencil option instead of the layer because I don't want to sharpen the whole painting, just the highlights. So I can just go here and there a bit and it will have a similar effect to the drop shadow thing. But I actually prefer this one. Usually it takes a few times to actually see something. So here, for example, I sharpened it 4 times. And that's pretty much it. Now the painting is good to go. Actually, sometimes I just color correct it a little bit, and that might affect the highlights too. But yeah, it might seem like it's not visible, but I really think it makes a difference overall, especially on close-up portraits. It's just a nice detail that I like to do. Anyways, I hope these tips helped you, and if there's a particular subject you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next time. Hopefully sooner than later. Okay, bye.